The following is a Civic Special from the San Francisco Public Press.
Thank you for joining us here at Manny's for a conversation about San Francisco's upcoming local elections in June and November and what voters might see on those ballots. I'm Lila LaHood, Executive Director of the San Francisco Public Press. I'll be teaming here as moderator with Alex Lash, who's over here. He's editor-in-chief of the Frisk. If you haven't heard of our organizations, the San Francisco Public Press and the Frisk, they're both nonprofit news organizations here in San Francisco, and I hope you'll check out our websites. I will introduce our panelists and cover a few rounds of questions before trading places with Alex, who is out in the audience right now and will be fielding questions for our panelists. So let me introduce our panelists. I will start at the far end with Jason McDaniel, who is Associate Professor in the Department of Political Science at San Francisco State University. Jason specializes in urban politics and elections, with a particular emphasis on how election rules and institutions affect voters. His research about ranked choice voting explores how it affects voter turnout, ballot errors, and racially polarized voting. His research about the top two primary system focuses on its impact on women candidates for state legislatures. He's currently working on a book project about San Francisco politics. Next, we've got Jeremy Lee, who is a third-generation San Franciscan with a decade of experience in local politics, community work, and affordable housing. He is president of the Rose Pack Asian American Club and co-host of Between the Fog and Fury, a hyper-local podcast focused on San Francisco politics. Since 2017, Jeremy has worked at Chinatown Community Development Center, ensuring financial regulatory compliance for more than 1,200 units of low-income housing. You can find Jeremy on all social media platforms under his handle, which is Jeremy Lee SF. And then immediately to my left, we have Sin Wang, who is vice president of the San Francisco Entertainment Commission and manages her family business, Wang Insurance. She is a founding board member of the West Side Family Democratic Club. Sin previously served as assistant city attorney to several Bay Area cities, as a U.S. diplomat during the Obama administration, and managed public policy at Airbnb. She lives in the Sunset District with her wife and daughter. So, we have a lot of topics, and I do want to say thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. I'm going to jump in. Now, some of these issues we know will be on the June ballot because groups have gathered enough signatures to put them there through the initiative process. We haven't passed all the deadlines yet, and there are a couple of mechanisms for getting things on the ballot. So we're not 100% sure whether there might be additional things that will appear on the ballot in June. And we'll flag things as much as possible to give you a heads up about what we're talking about for June versus November. So I'm going to start first with business taxes. So let's start with the Overpaid CEO Act, which is a local initiative that just in the past week secured enough signatures to qualify for the June ballot. So it's supported by supervisors Mahmoud and Chen and a whole bunch of unions, including SEIU Local 1021, the Firefighters Union, United Educators of San Francisco, the UAW, and groups representing building trade, healthcare workers, and others. We already have local taxes affecting big companies, both gross receipts tax and administrative office tax, and we also have something called the top executive pay tax. So what's going on with this new one? This new measure would modify and boost the top executive pay tax based on a couple of formulas, and there are also either possibly one or two countermeasures supported by businesses that haven't qualified yet for the ballot that would eliminate or reduce the business taxes. For businesses with one, it's under 7.5 million in gross receipts, with the other under 10 million, and sort of change things with mid-sized businesses. I've already gone a little far into the weeds, but without going further into the weeds, why are we adjusting the way we calculate business taxes again? Is this just a tug of war, and are we going to keep going back and forth on this? Who wants to jump in on this one?
It's politically popular, right now.
Okay, say more about that.
That's the reason. Look, I think especially sort of left progressives in San Francisco see, taxing billionaires or taxing, like kind of anti-tech corporation politics to be very popular, and it generally is. And I think that's largely behind it. And I think you're seeing it popular. That's why most of the politicians are supporting it, except for maybe Mayor Lurie. And you're going to see the Chamber of Commerce have to negotiate about this, and that's what they're going to do. So I think there's a possibility for a kind of compromise to lower some of the gross receipts taxes while doing this.
So you expect
yeah, it's popular and it won't be controversial and won't be a lot of opposition.
And that
I suspect form. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Jeremy or Sin, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. I think this is just an overall recognition that AI and just large corporations that call San Francisco home owe a lot of their profits due to our city's workforce, and that they are making money using city resources like our amazing citizens and residents of San Francisco, and so they need to pay their fair share. With the Trump administration, we've seen a lot of cuts, especially to federal programs, and this measure is meant to backfill some of those cuts to ensure a minimum level of service that our residents of San Francisco deserve.
So it's a local response to what's happening at the federal level.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. And Sin, you had some thoughts?
I'd like to address that last point. I strongly support tax reform at the federal level so that we can tax billionaires. We see that the rich are getting richer under this administration. And as you said, the wealthiest Americans aren't paying their fair share. But to do this at the local level is shooting ourselves in the foot. Our economy relies on large employers. San Francisco isn't operating in isolation. So if right now our controller has already issued a report saying that to do business in San Francisco, a hypothetically large company is paying multiples more of business tax than similarly situated Silicon Valley cities like Mountain View and Sunnyvale. So we are not just competing with New York and Chicago for jobs. We're competing with businesses down the road, South San Francisco, San Mateo, Sunnyvale, San Mateo. And as a progressive person, as a Democrat who believes that we should support things like social programs, our tax base relies on large employers. They disproportionately contribute payroll tax, job creation, transit ridership, demand for small businesses. This all flows from large corporations. So if we create disincentives for them to operate here and here alone, it's very easy for them to pick up and move to another close by city and invest there and create jobs there. We are just digging ourselves out of the economic crisis we were in during the pandemic. So for now, as we're starting to recover, then to do this to ourselves and create disincentives for investment seems to me like a very bad move for our economy.
Okay, thank you. You did give me something, though, that tacks on to the next question, which this is about a San Francisco measure, but there's a possibility we might see on the state level in November what's being called a billionaire's tax. And there's efforts to collect signatures on this now. Sin, you mentioned, we should be taxing billionaires, but you said at the state or federal level. What do you think of this proposal and what that would do for business in California?
Well, I specifically said at the federal level because, again, I think often about competitive disadvantage. I'm a business person, and I think, where would I put my business? And for us to continually layer, well-intentioned, layer regulation upon regulation, tax upon tax, continues to put us at a competitive disadvantage with other states. Federally, I would love a wealth tax. Love it. Capital gains, increase our taxes. But to continue to put us at a competitive disadvantage, I'm not sure how I feel about it. California, I think I would support that much more than a San Francisco one because we have a lot of natural advantages, especially in our talent pool, in our natural, like in our nature, what we offer. We're a coastal city. We have a great climate. We have a fantastic talent pool, great universities. So there are reasons that companies and wealthy individuals would still work here. But again, I feel very conflicted about this because other states aren't going to be moving in the same direction. And I think the outcome at the end could be losing a lot of major employers and investment.
Jeremy, how about you? In your interest in making sure that our expenses are covered for people who live here, what are your thoughts on this proposal for a billionaire tax at the state level?
Again, I think it's just making companies pay their fair share.
Hey,
talk
Jason,
myself.
what's the likelihood of something like this if it ends up on the ballot, A, getting approved by voters, and B, what kind of, do you think it would be appealed?
I mean, what's interesting to me is the San Francisco version tax. They've made pains to distance themselves from the state level one. And the rollout of that got a lot of pushback from a lot of people, including the governor. And so I suspect it was written in a way that was, it feels, I'm not an expert on this, but it feels like it was written in a way that was a little bit clumsy. And so I think there'll be, it might not get on the ballot. I think there'll be some opposition to it amongst politicians in the legislature, the governor. If it does get on the ballot, it'll probably pass because you're not going to have Democrats going against it. You're not going to have Gavin Newsom being out against it publicly during a time when he's hoping to run for president. So. I think that's the gamble that they're taking. It's a similar political gamble, but it seems written in a way that is not targeted at necessarily businesses, but individuals in a way that I think is causing people who care about the governance to be wary of it.
Okay, so speaking of governance, back to the local level. So Mayor Lurie and Board of Supervisors President Mandelman have launched an effort to drastically revise the city charter, which it turns out at nearly 600 pages is the longest charter in the country. So they by far. So they have pulled together a fairly broad group representing community organizations, government, and business interest. And I'll say there seems to be some good intention here and perhaps agreement from a lot of people that streamlining could help the city run more efficiently. But we've already seen pushback on reforming the commission system, a process that's still in the works, and that's not nearly as big a project. So my question is it a good idea to tackle charter reform all in one go like this? Are there other ways to do it? And how might they present this to voters to secure broad enough support for what now they haven't even done it yet, so I don't even know what they're asking voters to support, but whatever it is, it's gonna be big.
I suppose you're looking at me on this one?
Yeah, I'm looking at you.
Look, let me, if you don't mind, I'll talk a
Please,
little bit about
you can break that
our
down, yes.
context a little bit. We have a charter that was created by a similar kind of process in 95. It started in 96, adopted in 96. That created a stronger mayor system. And since then, it's been amended over 100 times by a lot of ballot initiatives that are passed. San Francisco has the lowest voter threshold of any city in the state to get things to qualify for charter amendments. And it has systematically taken power away from the mayor, empowered commissions, empowered the board, done a lot of things with department heads and departments and who they report to, really taking it away from the commission to away from the mayor to commissions and often the board in a way that is really the opposite of what the 1996 charter was designed to do. And so, and most of that has been not one man, but Aaron Peskin has been a lot of the energy behind a lot of those initiatives on an issue by issue basis. What it's done is taken power from the mayor, right, for like popular issues, but it creates something that has made accountability pretty much impossible. And I think this was an issue for the last mayor. It's an issue for the current mayor. And so I broadly support this kind of thing. What's interesting to me is, unlike the sort of political proposal a year or so ago, this one's got the support of the mayor and the president of the board right away, at least in theory, right? And I think that bodes well for the process. And they're, basically doing two things. Taking some of the idea of the department heads and letting the mayor have more control of them, like the mayor had in the original 1996 charter. So restoring some of that, but not all of it. And then also doing a lot of streamlining, budgetary stuff, a lot of things that are designed to weaken the mayor, both in the 96 charter and since. I think that's the onus of this. And I think a lot of it also getting deep in the weeds on budgetary stuff, city administrator stuff. There's a lot of stuff there that I think is why Mandelman is supporting this as well, or at least in theory supporting this. So I do think this is the way to do it, is all at once. For me, it's the ballot reform measures. It's too easy to get things on the ballot in San Francisco. And I love it. This is what I'm apparently writing a book about, supposedly. But San Francisco's got the lowest threshold on ballot initiatives by citizens and also charter reform amendments, charter amendments. It's state law is going to be required to change that. So it is the most permissive in so many ways. And I think we govern by ballot initiative. And so I do think this is required. And there's been some proposals. Spur's done a great report on this. There's been a couple of reports in the last few years about this, if you want to learn more. But that's the context of it, and I do think it's probably the right way. I don't know if it's the right time, though, and that's interesting to me.
That's interesting because of what's happening on the larger scale, that there's so, and because of budgetary pressures. Is that why you're questioning it?
I just don't know if it's going to take a process to push this in a kind of, quote unquote, bipartisan way, and I think this has that, but it's going to be a long slog, right? And this might be something that the mayor will he have the energy to really, be the main engine behind it? I don't know. Yeah.
Let me ask a follow-up on that. Let's say they get started and realize it's going to take more time. Is there any harm in that, in continuing it and saying it's going to take us a little longer to get this done, it's not going to be on the November ballot?
I suspect they have to. If they try to rush it, I don't know if they have yet the political support for it. I mean, this kind of thing takes time. The last one took, I think it took a decade. I may be wrong about that. I'm writing a book about this. But yeah, it's going to take some time. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is more of a second-term Lurie thing, but starting it now, building that support, that's the kind of thing I think is the right way to do it.
Yeah. Okay. I see Sin and Jeremy holding their microphones up. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's overdue, long overdue. So it may take time to build the political will and the consensus, but we need to do it as soon as possible. Just speaking as an everyday small business owner, I think every person who's had a touch point with Department of Building Inspection, planning, our permit center, our Byzantine, I'm going to mix a lot of Kafkaesque layers of of bureaucracy in the city. It's very frustrating. There's a lot of dysfunction. There's no transparency. I mean, DBI and planning were one of the only cities in the world where they're split into separate departments. They have different software and different staff. The software can't communicate with each other. They were ordered to integrate it and weren't able to do it. I don't know how many millions they paid to different consultants. Just to give an example, I own a small business where someone graffitied chink on it and then a few months later broke all my glass at night. I then tried to install a gate over it, was told I had to get a permit for that. I went to the permit center for 4 days and I talked to maybe 28 officials. I ended up paying thousands in permit fees. I went to the news. The head of one of the departments called me to help me get it over the finish line. I ended up spending $30K to get, and I don't know how many days and hours of my time, how many calls to be able to build a gate, which they required 25% perforation over, so I had to then go to over 100 vendors, and they required me to get an architect and an engineer to draw a drawing of it. Then I had to submit to the department. So I just want to give one anecdote for why the system is so broken and why we need permit reform and why we need charter reform. And a lot of this is happening because the power is taken away from the mayor. So for instance, a lot of people blamed Mayor Breed for the dysfunction of the city when she was up for re-election. Mayor Lurie has pretty much the same platform and policy ideas. The only difference between them is that we now have a moderate Board of Supervisors. Everything she proposed was dead in the water. They had a veto-proof majority. So she's being blamed for a lot of that dysfunction, but I don't blame the public either because we don't have transparency, we don't have accountability. So much is happening at the commission level and at the Board of Supervisors gatekeeper level, and people don't see that. I'm speaking as a sitting commissioner. We have commissions that are almost all vacant, that haven't met for months or sometimes even years, doing 2 or 3 commissions doing redundant same work. We have way too many commissions, so we have a desperate need for streamlining and cleaning up at the city level. I could go on about this for hours.
Let me ask Jeremy. Jeremy, if this process is moving forward, what are some specific things that you would like to see attention given to, if we're giving attention to the charter, what would you like to see happen? Or, tell us what you think.
Ooh. I would really just want to see a lot of community input and involvement. I don't want to see just the kind of political class kind of dictating what changes are made. So when it comes to charter reform or just like overall like reform of the city's so-called constitution, I'm really looking at just like the details. I mean, I think there's a widespread recognition that yes, the charter is way too bloated. Yes, the charter gets in the way of businesses trying to do repairs. I mean, like I work in housing development for affordable housing, and we run into the exact same issues, and we have a team of employees that their job is to navigate this, and it's still very hard. But what I'm really looking for is just like the devil's always in the details, and that like I have concerns that like there is a reform for the city charter, but some other things might get snuck in there. So, for example, I'm concerned about maybe an attack on budget set-asides. So, for example, the Baby Prop C, the funding for subsidies for childcare in San Francisco, that is a budget set-aside, and that those set-asides might be under attack. So that's something that I'm concerned about.
That's a really good point. Jason, I'll let you have a quick comment, then I'm going to jump to the next question.
Ooh, but there's so much more to say. But yeah, I mean that is one of the things that on there. Like, there's no sunset provisions in any of these citizens measures, and there's no way for legislature, board of supervisors, mayor to amend these at all, even if people want to, right? It has to be a whole another process of the citizens' emission. So it's really moved power away from, like, unlike you, I do blame the public. Like, we've all passed these, right? I mean, we haven't necessarily known we were doing this, but we've all passed these, right? And although there are trade-offs between community input and being able to do things, right? And so I do think that's what this is about. Really, the research, I'll just end on the research idea. The research shows that there's really only one politician that voters are capable of holding accountable for these things, and it's a mayor, right? Time after issue after issue after issue, voters look to the mayor in their vote to hold the mayor accountable. And when mayors have authority, we see them respond to those incentives. And in our situation, we've done over the last 30 years, we've given the mayor authority and then taken it away. And yet we're still holding the mayors accountable. And this is exactly what you were saying. So I think that's the situation we're in.
One thing we know that's going to be on the ballot is Supervisor Mahmoud's proposal to set term limits for the mayor and supervisor to 2 terms total, whether served one at a time or consecutively. This would be a charter amendment, again, requiring voter approval. Is this something San Francisco voters are likely to support or not, and why? Let's give everybody quick answers, and then we'll move on to the next thing.
I don't know how likely they are to support it, but I think the fact that we can have electeds run indefinitely by hopping off for a cycle is not what the law intended. It's a loophole, and it's a loophole that should be closed, again, in the spirit of accountability and outcomes.
In general, I think term limits are good, but let's just be clear. This legislation is really targeting one single person, and that person is Aaron Peskin. And there's a fear that like he may run for a 3rd term, but I highly, highly doubt he will. I just overall think that we should not be legislating based off a single individual.
Okay, Jason?
Look, San Francisco, I want to say this. I still think it's true, but I'm not sure yet. So it's the only city that has this. It was obviously not the intent of the original measure. So I do think this loophole has been abused a little bit, not only by one man, but I mean, he has pushed this, and he's had the right to do that. I think it's quite clever of him. And like, look, in general, I don't support term limits, short ones for legislators. I do for executive offices. But in this case, I think voters wanted it to be 2 terms, so I do think this is probably, it's going to get on the ballot if it's supported by mayor, a broad slice of the board. I think it has a good chance, and so we'll see. But look, it was never intended to be the way it is, and for me, it's not about one man. It's about, it was never intended this way. The voters wanted term limits of 2 terms for board of supervisors and others, and that's not what we have.
Let's talk about the Great Highway and Sunset Dunes. So I don't want to miss this one. This is such an interesting topic that has really gotten people mobilized on both sides. And we saw Supervisor Joel Engardio get recalled in great part due to his support of closing the stretch of Great Highway that is now designated as Sunset Dunes. But now we have Supervisor Alan Wong, who holds the same seat. He couldn't get enough support from fellow supervisors to put a proposition on the June ballot to bring the question of reopening that stretch of highway back to voters, but there are supporters of the idea who are trying to make it happen in November. It's hard to tell at this point. Where does community sentiment stand, and has anyone shifted on this? Are there any notable negotiations or concessions, or do we just have two sides that disagree? Jeremy, you jump in first.
Sure. We definitely have two sides that disagree. And it's really going to be up to the voters of San Francisco to decide once and for all. I think specifically for the Sunset, what is really fascinating is that this whole issue is happening within the context of a supervisor race in June. On top of that, there is a repaving of 19th Avenue that's happening all year long. So the three main thoroughfares of Sunset are formerly the Great Highway, Sunset Boulevard, and 19th Avenue. Great Highway's gone. Now 19th is slowed down for a lot of this year, all during an election year. So, people are going to be really upset. People are going to be upset that they have to sit in traffic and kind of reroute their lives around this construction.
Okay, Sin, we know you live out there too, so.
Born and raised in the Sunset, have my business in the Sunset. My daughter's a public school student in the Sunset. Why are we obsessed with this issue? Why are we relitigating it? I can't even open the Facebook Sunset group because that's all anyone will talk about. And we cannot relitigate this to death. Voters have voted on it twice. They have spoken. They've spoken loudly and clearly. I don't know how many more times we have to vote on this again. It is a park at the end of the day, and it's one that this is what I think a lot of voters are missing, that the southern portion of it is falling into the ocean, coastal erosion. We cannot fight Mother Nature. I think the ballot measure to fully close it off to cars was probably premature. The people who supported the park should have waited until the southern portion was closed, which it is now. So had they done it now, it's not a thoroughfare anyway anymore, because half of it is closed. And for those who are not acknowledging the environmental factors, I think that's something we have to discuss. The real way to deal with congestion in the Sunset is to improve transit. And that's ultimately the real frustration here. It's not an attack on cars. It's not an attack on anyone's life. Some of the best aspects of San Francisco are our parks and our public spaces, and we just need to invest in transit and make sure we have other great roads and transportation options for people.
Jason, I'm going to let you go quickly. Yes.
Look, it's about people's sense of community and identity. They do feel attacked, as you guys know, and so it's not going to go away. You both make great points. I actually have a question. Do you feel like there's support for the close it on the weekends only compromise in the community? One. And two, do people who generally vote progressive in San Francisco, have they shifted on this issue? Because I think there's been a lot of attention from people, on the progressive side on this. It might, I could see something changing citywide on this a little bit, right? Getting enough attention. So I wonder if you guys have any thoughts about that.
First, I'll say that I am ultra uber progressive, Bernie Sanders, AOC kind of person, and love parks. I run on the Great Highway regularly, but when it came to Prop K, I voted against it. I thought I'm a strong proponent of community control, and the Sunset was very clear on what they wanted, and that was to not close the Great Highway.
It's interesting you pose this question about progressive, because I am also a huge fan of AOC and Bernie, and I'm called a moderate here. I think the definitions of what's progressive. AOC is my political hero. Love everything she has to say. And I'm regularly accused of being conservative here. So I think that those definitions don't mean a lot here. I think for me, it's more of a definition of I see a NIMBY left that has a coalition with a more conservative group of people who just want to kind of hermetically seal San Francisco in the 1960s or 70s, especially on the west side. They don't want to see any development. They don't want to see any growth. They want to keep things the same. And they're also leaning much more towards like, we need law and order, we can't have affordable housing here, we need a police presence. And they have a coalition with the NIMBY left. So I don't think that's progressive. I think it's a pro-growth group versus an anti-growth NIMBY group. And those are the new two kind of divisions that I'm seeing coming up in the city.
Okay, I'm going to jump in because I want to get Alex up here. But Alex, should we take one or two questions from the audience and then trade places?
Sure. Let's do quickly 2 questions about what's just come up. Go ahead. I'll get you.
My name's Jordan.
No, we actually need you. For the
yeah,
recording.
Okay. My name's Jordan. We were just talking about the progressive moderate labels. What should the new labels for our coalitions in San Francisco be, if not moderate and progressive? Do you guys have any proposals?
I try to use the term accurately. I use the term left progressive because I think there's a little bit of that. But again, whatever they want to call themselves, that's what I try to do. But the interesting thing for me is that the term moderate was not embraced by people who were called moderate originally, though that started to change a little bit. So it was more of an insult, I think, that came from people who consider themselves progressive. Look, I agree those labels voters don't think of them the way we do, right? But they still matter and they're still real. And so it's hard to deal with that, right? And so I think it's up to, I wrote a piece a long time ago. It's what the organizers and political leaders and community leaders make them mean, right? And so that's what it means. And yeah, you're right. There's a left NIMBY part of it. There's other parts of it. There's community control parts of it. There's other things, right? But there's a lot of voters who consider themselves this, who will follow along with some of those community leaders, and that's what I'm interested in, is where they're going to go on this issue.
Thank you. Alex, let's trade microphones.
The people
Ready?
demand
1,
Alex
2,
talk.
3.
Go. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
We're going to try the same little audience break in a few minutes. The trick is ask about what we've just talked about, because that's what we wanted you guys to do. Not paying attention. Okay, so housing. So did I hear housing? Anyone talk about housing? I don't know if there's any other housing-related measure on the San Francisco ballot. However, housing is definitely going to be in play because of the family zoning plan, which just passed in December. And we have some supervisor races coming up, the special elections in June for District 2 and District 4, which we've just talked about, which I suspect will hinge on housing. What do you guys think in terms of what went down with the zoning plan and how it's going to, and more specifically, how it's going to affect those supervisor races? Jeremy, go ahead.
Sure. So I work in affordable housing. I've worked at Chinatown CDC for almost 10 years now.
Any scuttlebutt on that big bond? Do you know what's...
I haven't heard
$10 billion.
anything concrete, but
Okay.
it seems like it's all like very new. In terms of the family zoning plan, it's just a plan. It doesn't compel or force anyone to build anything. Let's just be clear on that. But it does create the incentives for people to build denser and higher, especially in the north side of the city and the west side of the city, which coincidentally in District 2, Stephen Sherrill is up for election, and in District 4, Alan Wong is up for election. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these two politicians navigate this family zoning plan, and how especially their opposition kind of deals with that. I think we all saw the mega project in the marina, and there's going to be it's a tangible project. So neighbors, residents are going to have something to point to. Supervisor Sherrill has already come out, I think, against the project. And
the mayor.
Yeah, and the mayor. So, we'll see how they navigate that.
Go ahead, Sin.
Well, my animating factor in politics is housing. Someone in the audience asked what will be the defining issue for the next election. I think locally it will be housing. I'm a very proud NIMBY. I'm a parent, and my child is 12. The entry point to buy a home in San Francisco now is what, like 1.8 million? she's 12 now. I don't know when she's old enough. It's going to be 5 million.
Got to start saving.
Yeah,
Wait,
6
You're a
million.
proud NIMBY or YIMBY?
Yimby.
Oh, sorry.
Yimby. We have chronically underbuilt for decades and decades. We haven't kept up with demand. I think there are a lot of people on the NIMBY left in San Francisco who have ignored like basic demand and supply. When you don't build supply, demand there's a pressure valve there, and it causes rent to rise. And the same people are competing for the same finite group of aging apartments, single-family homes, and it makes our housing crisis worse and worse. We need abundant housing. We need accessible housing. We need it at all levels. It can't just be affordable. I have 20 employees. Most of them are super commuters. I pay a very good wage, but people cannot, the 2 million entry point is not accessible. So they're commuting 1 to 2 hours each way to work here. And I drive around main streets all over San Francisco and I look, and most of our workers cannot afford to live here, and it is a supply issue.
But are you going to be able to convince the voters of District 2 and District 4 of that in order to elect supervisors?
I'm going to continue
or
speaking in events like this, organizing groups, and being very politically involved in trying to evangelize this. As to whether I can convince District 4, I am not feeling that confident based on what's been going on.
Okay. How much, I'm sure, Jason, I mean, people said the Engardio recall was about the Great Highway, but kind of retroactively, a lot of the anti-zoning plan folks said, oh yeah, Engardio, you were also for the zoning plan, and we hate you for that too. See you later. How much of that is retroactive? When we actually test this in June with D4, do you think there's going to be a big anti-housing vote?
Oh, yes.
And
But it's
D2
gonna be
as
about,
well.
It's going to be about Wong's vote for the plan. I mean, that's what it's going to be about. It's not. But look, you're right. It's retroactive, but it was something that, again, the narrative of our changing our community, fighting for our community, protecting our community. I'm someone who is, I am proud YIMBY, but I've been here long enough before that term existed, and the YIMBY movement has done a great job, both locally, statewide, nationally. In public opinion has changed on this. Like the YIMBY movement and the idea of abundance has a lot of support in the Democratic Party. A lot of Democratic Party leaders and elites, community organizations, and, are for this because they see the basic cost benefit, the idea of how cost of living, et cetera. But I'm also a political scientist who said that everybody's a NIMBY. At one level, I believe everybody's a NIMBY, right? YIMBY politics can be very popular on certain levels, but when it comes down to actual voters at the district level, it's a much different story often. And so it will be a very big challenge for these politicians to sell this issue, right? Because a lot of those people, yes, they support it, but then will they be blamed for specific projects? You call it a mega project, whatever, but the Safeway projects, whatever, there are going to be a lot of them. And a lot of YIMBYs have said proudly, look, if they stop these, the builder's remedy will happen, and we'll have even less control. And that's a policy victory, but it's not a political victory. And so my question is, will politicians like Cheryl, Wong, Lori, will they be held responsible for those individual projects? Because there will be a kind of natural backlash. We see this in politics all the time. When something happens, like Obamacare happens, there's a little bit of a backlash to public opinion against it sometimes, right? It takes some time for that to change. We're going to start to see that as well. There's been a big victory, right? A big YIMBY victory. The energy is going to be on the side of more opposing that. So I do think these politicians are going to have to face that on the ballot in June and in November, and I think it's going to be the major issue for those local races.
We have seen some larger citywide races. I'm thinking Matt Haney versus David Campos. David Campos was very clearly, anti-housing or opposed Haney's very pro-housing. Haney trounced him, and this was on the east side of the city a few years ago. But that was a few years ago. Citywide, is this going to be a shift back to a board, perhaps, that will block some housing initiatives? And what is housing policy going to look like in 2027 because of this?
Right.
Let's do short answers on this one.
Look, I do think you're going to see this animate a lot of energy on the board, and you're going to this is, you can go back into the 90s and see this pattern, but I suspect we'll get a less pro-YIMBY board. It doesn't matter in some respects, but there will be a lot of ballot initiatives to try to push back on some of these things, right? You're going to see people like balloting with the budgeting and planning by ballot measure. Even if they say they don't, they do, right? So you're going to see a lot of that.
Okay. Any last words on housing, how the elections will affect housing?
I have a more optimistic view. Lurie is seeing record popularity. I think a lot of his views reflect a growing appetite for more housing and also understanding what the scarcity of housing is causing. The real culprit of displacement is scarcity.
Okay. Someone asked about the race for Pelosi's seat. I just mentioned one of the assembly members' seats. Haney is back up for re-election. And then on the west side, Catherine Stephanie is up for re-election. Let's talk about those three races quickly through the lens of what they mean to San Francisco. I mean, if whoever it is, Scott Wiener or Chakrabarti or Connie Chan becomes, a congressperson and a backbencher, can they really do anything for San Francisco? Like, they'll be a national figure, but what do these elections mean for actual on the ground policy in San Francisco?
Look, voters don't vote on policy. They're not thinking about that, right? So it's representation, who we are as a city and who are our leaders, right? Scott, represents a lot of what San Francisco is. So does Connie Chan, and it is going to be a close race. I don't know how it's going to go. Scott Wiener is very popular. He's got the advantage of a lot of the people who are going to be voting for him have already voted for him. That is a big deal in politics. Connie Chan's favorables she's underwater, as we say, right? That could change, though, because there's a lot of research that shows that when there is an ethnic minority community that has a chance to get kind of historic representation for the first time, it drives turnout, it drives votes, right? We're going to see that. A lot of support for Connie Chan, especially if she gets an endorsement from Nancy Pelosi. So I think this is going to be a very difficult race because Connie Chan, Scott Wiener, and Daniel Lurie have won not only but largely with a coalition that includes Chinese voters. And if she takes that away, it's going to be much harder for him to win.
Any thoughts? Go ahead,
sure.
Jeremy.
Yeah. I've been seeing it definitely within the Chinese community, which can often be very conservative. We saw, like in District 4, how they voted in Joel Engardio very recently. I've seen a shift in how they see that, like, Connie is a homegrown San Franciscan. She grew up in the city, and she has proven through the Great Highway that she will fight for this community. And so I've been seeing a lot more conservative Chinese folks put their support behind Connie Chan. So I am seeing a shift.
Okay.
Let's zoom out nationally. Look what's going on. Our fellow citizens are being abducted and beaten and killed on the streets. Voters are looking to fill the shoes of a giant, Nancy Pelosi. They're looking, who can be the tip of the spear in our resistance? I think we need to zoom way farther out, and I think that's what a lot of San Franciscans are looking at.
I think you're right, and not only that in the governor's race as well, is that idea of fighting Trump and fighting the Republicans is the biggest issue. If Scott can make the race about that, he's most likely going to win. If it's about something else, right, then I think he has a harder time. Look, the idea of a change, I think nationwide, Democrats are ready for change. That's going to take place in primary elections. You're going to see a lot of older politicians stepping down, losing their primary races. Even though Scott is older than me, he doesn't look it, and that pisses me off. But I think he still has that ability to represent change. But so does Connie Chan, right? So if it's about national fighting Trump, that is ground that Scott wants that race to be on. And if he wants to make it so that about ideology where she is ideologically out of step with the neighborhood, that's what he's going to try to do with the community. But she's going to have a lot of tools in her weapons to fight as well. It's going to be a close race.
Okay, let's. There's a couple more topics that we want to get to, like in the next 10 minutes, and we're going to push the boundaries a little bit here until the Manny's folks kick us out. Any people here with kids in the public schools? Raise your hands.
Welcome to San Francisco.
Anyone here with parents in the public schools? Teachers. Well, there are 6,000 teachers so there are half the school board is going to turn over 3/7. My math is bad. Any thoughts about those Board of Education seats? There's going to be a special education in June. The board president, Phil Kim, has to run, and then run again in November with two others who have to run for re-election. Quick thoughts on what's been happening in the school district and what these elections mean. Sin, why don't you go since you're
Sure.
a kid?
And full disclosure, before I start, Phil Kim is my best friend, so
Oh, well, okay.
I may be a little bit biased, but I'm one of those people that got very involved in school policy activism during the pandemic. My daughter did kindergarten, first grade, and part of the second grade over Zoom, and it was a disaster, a total disaster. And this was when San Francisco was one of the last public school districts in the country to reopen and have children back in the classroom, despite federal officials, state officials, and local health officials saying it was safe to return, and public schools all being open. So I was very involved in the recall of those officials who I feel totally abdicated their duty and focused on all the wrong things, and that children are still paying the price of that. And now I just want to say that the new majority of people who are now governing our school district are setting the ship right, but this dysfunction didn't happen overnight. It happened over decades, and it's going to take a long time to right the ship again as well. And Phil has brought back focus. He's brought back operational efficiency. They're really looking at how to tackle this structural deficit, which is enormous, and this next year they have a major undertaking in terms of reconsolidation, closing down some of these schools that are super under-enrolled, and that's what's causing a big stretch as well.
So just I realize you're a big member of the Phil Kim fan club. A lot of what you just mentioned, some of the reforms have happened before he was appointed. In fact, the person he was appointed for also helped
Also
do a lot
helped
of those
lead
things.
that,
So
yes.
this is not just a Phil Kim.
Right, the new
issue.
moderate majority on the Board of Supervisors.
Any other school thoughts, you guys?
I mean, will voters still remember this? I mean, there was a wholesale rejection of some of the progressive candidates and school board members and policies. Do they still remember that, or have they forgotten? Or if they've forgotten, if that's no longer salient, the teachers' unions candidates will get a lot of support and may be able to win some of those races. So I do think what you've said there was amongst a lot of school parent type voters, that memory I think is going to be a little bit longer. There was a real anger at that. And so I do suspect that will still persist and will be the dominant factor there.
All right, let's throw it out to you guys for questions. There's a couple other topics that we didn't get to. Maybe you guys will bring them up, and if we don't, maybe we'll good. But go ahead, Lila's got the mic.
Okay, I'm moving over here to the right.
Don't ask about housing, Bobak.
I'm going to hold this right.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Short.
if I'm being told don't ask about housing, I guess I'll ask about housing's best friend, transit. There's going to be two major transit ballot measures. I'm hoping you could speak to them briefly about what the stakes are for this November election with both the regional measure and the local SF-only measure.
Sin, you mentioned transit. That I think you've given transit a shout out. So if you want to talk about, do you know anything about those measures or what's happening, or?
Certainly. Although I don't know if I want. Should I give the total overview as well? There's a regional measure which I think is a 1 cent per dollar sales tax in San Francisco and half a cent in the surrounding cities that are connected. Please correct anyone.
That
jump
is
in.
correct. It was one of the questions I had to cut, but yes.
Yes, and then there's a parcel tax for muni, and this is not just like, let's play around and see if we can experiment with some new things and add some new lines. No, like we are looking at catastrophic service cuts and a death spiral of our transit systems. So this is essential to our survival as a city and as a regional economy. Obviously, as a homeowner, I hate to see more parcel taxes, but this is a price we got to pay. We need to save our transit system.
Yeah, I think politically the leaders got the message, the fear of their lives, the last couple ones that were rejected. From what I've heard, the regional measure, there's been a lot of more cooperative work amongst the cities, which was lacking before. I feel like there's pretty unified support amongst political leaders in San Francisco for the muni one. Voters usually hear that. Voters listen to that, right? When you get mayors and boards and moderates and progressives talking in the same, the same tones, the voters hear that and will generally support that. I think the idea that people are starting to feel like the city's going in the right direction helps here. There's less of a let's reject everything. I do think that's the case, but the affordability thing is real, right? And so that idea that you're saying about parcel taxes is real, and so I do expect both of them will pass, but it's by no means guaranteed. Yeah.
Jeremy's
I
got
just want to add that the road to recovery relies on transit and a strong transit system. I think we can all agree on that, and I think both measures will pass.
I can repeat the question if you yell really loud. Housing question. In short, even with some of the numbers that are being thrown out there of how much we might build, or how is that actually going to bring prices down, whether it's buying or renting?
So.
Yeah. Well, let me just quickly. The study showed that places that build more, the rents can either stabilize and in some places go down. We've seen that in the last few years in other cities in the United States. And the research supports that, look, it's a shortage of housing, as you know. And so I do think people are skeptical of this, that prices will come down. There's actually research that shows that one of the reasons why people don't always support building more housing is they're skeptical of this idea that building more brings prices down, not just stabilizes them, right, but brings them down. So I think you're right to be skeptical of that. There's reasons to be skeptical, but we have no other choice, right? And that's the way I think of it. And so I believe the research, it's there, despite what some people will tell you. You build more, prices can come down, but you got to build a lot. And I think that's what you're actually getting at. You have to build a lot. And that's where I don't know if there's a lot of political will for a lot, right?
We've built 1 unit of housing for every 8 people that have moved here in the last several decades. So you talk about those numbers, but you have to talk about the number of people who've been relocating here as well. And I think he's right. You're right to be skeptical, but like supply and demand are real factors, and that certainly impacts pricing in every other area of life. So why do we think it wouldn't apply to housing? We also have seen many other cities upzone and have seen their rental and housing prices come down. A few of them are Seattle, Houston, and Austin. So I definitely encourage you to look at the data there.
Jeremy,
I'll just say that, in order for supply to, an increase in supply to really bring down rent in San Francisco, we would need to build at post 1906 levels.
Cool, let's do it.
Yeah. So it's just
Fantastic.
yeah. But I mean,
San
is that
Francisco's great.
realistic?
Let's build more of it.
I don't think so.
But
is there the land for that?
And what about the status quo and housing prices getting worse and worse? Should we not build and just keep things at the status quo as they exacerbate?
So I think that the status quo is not acceptable. I think the overall agreement there. But I will say that this whole idea of just simplifying housing to supply and demand, it's a bit reductive. That housing is a market that is on par of complexity with pharmaceuticals, with insurance. We learn in Econ 101 that as supply goes up, prices will go down. But when you study economics more, you learn that the market can be very easily manipulated. We have a small number of developers kind of controlling the market. And we're just left fighting for crumbs.
I'm so glad you brought up insurance as an insurance professional. So due to the California property crisis and the insurance overregulation, we have almost no carriers writing homeowners insurance in California. That has caused premiums to skyrocket, and the same with housing. And again, we have other cities who've already upzoned, and we've seen the results. So I think there are proven outcomes here.
Yeah, but for over 30 or 40 to 50 years, San Francisco has been doing community control, limits, moratoriums, and this is the result. Okay. Everybody knows the result.
Hold on.
So, yeah.
We've
do one quick question from the audience and then a wrap up.
Yes, let's do that.
Any other audience?
I will just repeat. Predictions for Pelosi's seat, and is it true that the June primary will let the top 2 pass through November? Pardon me.
You're putting me on the spot there. Yeah. Yes. Chakrabarty, there's no lane for him, and I'm surprised that he's still in the race. I suspect that will change eventually, but maybe not. He's relatively well-funded, so maybe he'll stick around. But it's going to be, Scott Wiener and Connie Chen, obviously. Look, if the pattern holds, whoever does win that will win. There's a lot of, on that. But I expect that Scott Wiener will win, but it is going to be, I think, a lot closer than people expect.
I have a totally opposite take. I think Shoykat Chakrabarti is a dark horse who is a ton of momentum. He's been filling town halls, and he's really of the moment of where we're swinging the pendulum to the opposite side of Trump. Like, he's capturing on, because he was AOC's chief of staff, he's capturing on that like squad energy, Bernie energy, and bringing a lot of that in. To me, I think he and Scott will be the front runners.
You think he's going to take votes from Connie Chen?
I think so. I think he's very formidable, and we shouldn't underestimate him.
No,
Congress is an entry-level position, is what I would say.
Let Jeremy get the last,
The mayor.
last word, Jeremy, last word.
I think it is very clearly going to be Scott and Connie. Chakrabarti, he is, has the charisma, but, San Francisco does not have a very strong track record of electing carpetbaggers.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's truth to that. But look, if the progressive San Francisco leaders were so united behind him, absolutely, but they're not. And he's splitting them, right? And there's gonna be a lot of pressure, and already, I mean, some of the insults that Peskin said against him, right? Like they're gonna try to push him out of the race. So I don't think he's gonna have much of a chance to get into the top two.
Okay, I lied. I get the last word. So maybe if Connie Chan does win, maybe we'll be back here talking about the next District 1 election to fill her seat. But until then, folks, we have to wrap this up. Before we go, again, the San Francisco Public Press, Lila and Lisa are here. I'm the editor-in-chief and the founder of The Frisk. We both do very local, very independent, nonprofit journalism. Now is the time to support folks like us. If not us, then other media outlets who are trying to do the work to bring you guys information that you need to be good citizens, good residents, and fight the good fight. So we do appreciate your support. And with that, Jason, Jeremy, Sin, thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. And stay tuned for our next, we have regular events here, so keep an eye out. Thank you very much.
This has been a Civic Special. Follow our local reporting at sfpublicpress.org and our friends at thefrisk.com.
KSFP and the San Francisco Public Press are supported by listeners like you. So please join the public press at sfpublicpress.org/donate. Or you can send a check to the San Francisco Public Press, 44 Page Street, Suite 504, San Francisco, California, 94102. Thank you, and thanks to the thousands of members who have made our work possible. This is KSFP LP San Francisco, 102.5 FM.
Around the turn of the 20th century, peaceful Sausalito was the scene of a bloody battle featuring heavyweight Gentleman Jim Corbett. Hi, I'm Larry Clinton, president of the Sausalito Historical Society, with a bit of Sausalito's secret history. Corbett met his opponent in a stable loft in Sausalito, crowded with more than 100 hysterical spectators who expected a police raid at any moment. 4 rounds into one of the most grueling, rough, and dirty fights ever staged, according to newspaper reports, the Marin County Sheriff couldn't stand anymore and stopped the bout. In a rematch across the bay just 6 days later, Corbett knocked his opponent out in the 27th round. 3 years after that, Gentleman Jim became world heavyweight champion and ironically was known as the father of modern scientific boxing. This secret Sausalito historic moment has been a co-production of the Sausalito Historical Society and Radio Sausalito. Stay tuned to Radio Sausalito to learn more about our secret history. And if you've got a question about our colorful past, send an inquiry to info@sausalitohistoricalsociety.org. Together, let's keep Sausalito history alive.